Rocking and rolling now.
You're on a MacBook?
I'm on a MacBook Pro.
I'm on a MacBook Pro.
Wow. See what you can do with technology.
It's great. It's great. So here we are. I believe this is show number 6 for us. So I think we're hitting a little bit of a stride.
We're over the hump. They say if you can make it past 4, you're really moving forward.
Oh, okay. Is that right? So more than 4 shows.
And the next goal should be 50.
Okay. All right. Well, before we reach election day, that's going to be 50. So we're getting there.
Well on our way.
But we are extremely busy. I just got off of a radio interview with WBT in Charlotte. I talked to the great Chad Adams, and I felt like I really was a blabbermouth because he asked me what's going on out there in NC politics. And I'm like, dude, where do I start? Right. We've got the budget process going on. We've got legislation going on. We've got, candidates who are running. We're all over the map.
And there's so much in the legislation going on. I mean, Sloan, from marijuana all the way down to citizen voting. We've got a lot to talk about today.
We have a lot to talk about today. So let's get right to it, shall we?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think this is really the most controversial thing. It sure is for me. And it is, it's not that actually. Let's go back.
I'm going to turn my phone off just in case somebody decides to call us while we're doing this.
Okay. So I'm going to back out and we're going to say, let's go back to it. Okay. So I'm not going to show this. I'm going to show it when I do my edit, but I'm going to talk about this, the bill. Okay. Ready? We're going to go back in 3, 2, 1. So this is one of the most controversial bills that's under discussion right now. The House a couple weeks ago put out a bill to regulate hemp. And now it looks like today the Senate kind of collapsed that House bill into one of their own that puts legalizing marijuana. Now, critics are going to say, hey, Sloan, you're not telling the truth. It's medical marijuana.
Ask people in Colorado and California that.
I'm not going to call. Yeah, it's marijuana. And here's the thing that you should know, that they'll tell you that, people with certain maladies would get it. And when I hear end stage cancer, things like that, I'm like, I'm fine. But then you go with PTSD, dude, everyone has a diagnosis of PTSD. Correct. Seriously, it's being over-diagnosed.
I agree with you, Sloan. And I'm worried because we see what's going on in Colorado. It's kind of collapsed already. They thought they were running into a gold mine, and it's really ended up not being that way. And then you look at Florida, who also has medical marijuana, but isn't medical when anybody can walk into a dispensary in Pensacola on your way to the beach. And then the bigger concern I have is legally, what does it mean when you're under the influence? And what are the guidelines for that?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And when I have spoken to sheriffs across North Carolina, they are definitely not for it for this reason. I didn't even think about it. But when they smell marijuana smoke, whatever it's called, they have the right to question someone, to stop someone, for it to lead to a discussion. And they've told me that at least half of the instances, they discover that someone's here illegally or an outstanding warrant. But those conversations now, they won't be able to be had since it's legal.
Well, and I think there's another piece that we're not talking about, and I want to bring this up because it's important for kids. I have a girlfriend in Atlanta who lost her son. He could have easily just taken one hit off a joint that was laced with fentanyl and he would have been gone, but that's not what happened. He took a pill that he thought was a Tylenol. But I think about it in parallel because we know kids do that. We know they do.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm going to put up some things right here from Colorado. This is a study that's done frequently on the side effects. Now, again, they do have recreational pot that they have legalized, but I'm telling you, it's can be abused. It's one and the same to me. That you'll see that young people kind of struggle with this the most. There's been a lot of auto accidents. People are under the influence, and I'm vehemently opposed to it. I know that we have people in our own party that are for it. But I make this prediction. I made it online before and took a lot of heat, but I really believe it. If you know, and I don't think the bill has a chance in the House. I just want to be clear. But if they do pass this, along with all of the blood, sweat, and tears and hard feelings that went into casinos, also and sports betting, we're going to have a hell of a time getting evangelicals and other really conservative folks out to vote.
I think there's another component of it to me is people don't talk about, and I know some people think this is crazy, but it can be considered a gateway drug. And I'm not saying that it is for everybody. I know plenty of veterans that need to take something like that for their PTSD, and I strongly advocate for them. But I don't want children taking it. I don't want to put ourselves in a position where that happens.
Well, PTSD, I mean, there's no, they're training teachers now in North Carolina to believe that if you have the skin color of Black, that you have PTSD.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's called trauma-informed teaching, and it's a big thing now here. But if it's trauma-informed, and begs the question, the diagnosis is all but meaningless. I think that's a real problem. There are some bright spots, though, that happened today. The Senate is really in favor. I think it's going to be, it's going to pass, I think, a constitutional amendment for making sure that U.S. citizens only can vote.
Well, the only concern I have with that is you would think that having a North Carolina driver's license that marks you as a U.S. citizen, you'd be cleared. But that's not what happened. We've had people in the DMV who just marked them as U.S. citizens, and now their driver's license says they are one.
But does that happen in a lot of cases? I mean, how widespread do you think that is?
It just depends on what you're talking about. Tucker Carlson said there was 4,000 that we know of, and another 10 that they suspected. So, I mean, do we want 14,000 people, 4,000 people? I mean, that's a concern. That's my only concern, because frankly, anything we can do to stave off the radical agenda, which they're using already, because we have voter ID, but they've created a voter ID exemption form that pretty much says if your dog eats your driver's license, you can vote anyway.
Interesting. So that will more than likely go on as a constitutional amendment, so folks will have to vote on it. I don't know if it's when it will be enacted, but last time we talked about, on Tuesday, we talked about some of the things that were in the House budget. And I want to tell you, I got some messaging. People were like, Sloan, you're only talking about the bad things. That's probably true. So tonight I'm going to tell you a couple of good things. But we talked about this, and I just want to bring this up, Margo. The Senate agrees with the House about this $135 million for daycare. So this probably will pass. And again, guys, that is saying, okay, the feds stopped paying for a federal program, and the state's going to pick it up, which has always been our argument against Medicaid expansion.
It's the same, because it goes to the same result. It's a form of socialism.
It's a form of socialism. And then you meaning the leaders of our party, because they're up there running the place. Since when do we trust the feds to keep up their end of the bargain? Since when do we believe that they're going to fund us in perpetuity for a program that you can only ratchet up, you can't ratchet down?
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's one of our chief complaints. So I think that will probably, go along. Teacher raises, the House wanted to raise teacher raises an extra 1%, bringing it to 4%, and the Senate left that out. The increase in public school spending will probably stay the same. Of course, the public school voucher, or the private school vouchers, that's going to happen, right? That's kind of the centerpiece of it all. So, okay, guys, there are things I like in this budget. I'm just going to tell you, in the House budget, I'm putting up the text right here. I hope you can see it. They're providing for a media advisory committee in public schools. And what it means is it's going to put together a committee of community leaders, parents, et cetera, that they have the opportunity to look at some of these library books. And I think some of this curriculum and say, is this aligned with our standard course of studies and, all of that. They're going to provide a little bit of room for parents to respond. What do you think, Margo?
Well, I like the second one the best. The fact that the local government has the sole authority to decide what is being taught. I'm fine with them giving money for underprivileged children and children in general to go to daycare if it's done appropriately. And part of this to me may backfire on the Democrats because they think that they're pro-abortion. But if you take the problem of I can't afford a child by allowing to pay for daycare, you know what I mean? So some part of this is good to me, but I really love the local discretion to stop whatever, because it really should be up to the local government. I can tell you where I live in Western North Carolina, far Western North Carolina, we don't approve of some of the things that we know that Raleigh and Wake County would approve of, and we don't want them here.
Well, that's a bit of a misnomer because when you're taking federal funds, and so the way it works, and even though it's a minuscule amount, the DPI who disseminates those funds will regulate to an extent. Let me give you an example: social emotional learning. So some funding for COVID came with those strings, and it also came with the strings that culturally responsive teaching, and that is CRT, be taught. So while it is at the local level discretion, the state does have a lot of input. In fact, the lion's share, because the EOGs, the end of grade testing, that everything they do has to be aligned. And when you have these social studies standards, which we've been criticizing for a while, who have CRT in it, sadly, that's right. Sadly, sometimes, local politics be damned, this is going to happen. And so we do need to, watch out for that. So, but that's one good thing in the budget. And there's some tough on crime things that I really love. And hey, I do have to have a shout out right quick. This passed unanimously in the House and the Senate, an anti-human trafficking measure. Let me put this up. So first of all, you recognize this right away, punishing people who hire prostitutes. I think they're called Johns. Whoops, I'm behind the times. Okay, John. So
you don't want to know what we called them in my generation.
Yeah, I guess
with a P.
Right. I get you. Get you. But so I think this is great. I think that requiring training for folks that run Airbnb, I think it would apply to Airbnbs or lodging, training them on the signs of what to look for is important. And I think having the labor commissioner, that's going to be Luke Farley, we all know that, having him responsible for doing more training. I think more training is always good on how to recognize this, but this is such a problem.
It is a problem. I can honestly say it's a big problem from where I live, because we're the gateway from Atlanta. Let's just be honest. If you don't want to go through Charlotte on the highway, you're going to come through our way. And you especially want to go through here because we got a casino where you can traffic. I'm not saying they do, but they do.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to have these measures for all parts of the state. It can't just be something that fits Raleigh and Wake. It fits what we need here locally.
I know that sheriffs have been particularly aggressive about apprehending child predators. I have another story out today on our NC Political Tea Substack where, the guy, it's happening all over. The HR department head in the Department of Revenue, was busted allegedly for, trying to hit up a 15-year-old for sex. And get this, it ended up that there's groups of, you're going to love this, there's groups all over the country of people like you and me and everybody watching who get together and they form these citizen groups and they try to catch predators and they end up being very successful. And and so apparently that's how this guy was hung out to dry and taken off the streets, and yay.
That's the same thing that happened to Stacey Abrams. I think it's her brother-in-law, right? The judge's husband down in Florida. Citizen journalists got together and caught him.
Yeah, look,
everywhere.
Police officers can't do it themselves. No one can do it themselves. Teachers can, no one. We have to be aware. We have to come together and be aware. And in fact, this is kind of what this show is all about.
Absolutely.
So that's that. And so, and so we're going to skip now to start talking about while we're talking about citizen voting and while we're talking about crime, we're going to bring up some hard topics of stuff we've been hearing in the news over the last, several weeks about citizens or non-citizens, illegals coming into our country and wreaking havoc, killing people. This is a story that has come out of California where a grandfather was involved in a serious accident where a semi plowed into him, and that man who did it is an illegal from Ecuador. And this kind of stuff happens all the time. And people will say, well, gosh, it happens all the time with citizens. I know that, dummies. I know that. But by the way, the people saying that are leftists. But what we don't need are added crimes, right? And not being able to find the perpetrators from having these porous borders. We
and
know
no insurance. Let's be honest. It also, they're uninsured.
Well, right. I mean, let's talk about this guy. He was uninsured. They had to spend countless resources to track him down. And look, the law is the law. They're not only breaking the law by doing this, they're coming in to our country and they're not citizens. And a lot of them, some of them have, yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm very mindful of the Laken Riley thing because she's close to where I live. I'm close to the University of Georgia. And that has to be one of the saddest incidents you've ever heard. This young lady goes out for a walk or a jog and somebody's watching her. And just like this lady, Rachel.
Just like this lady. Yeah. And it's through no fault of their own, might we add, right? Through no fault of their own. So Rachel Morin was killed. She's a mother of 5, you guys. And, she was killed by an illegal, Victor Antonio Hernandez. He was arrested, get this, in Oklahoma. So again, we're talking about using a tremendous amount of resources to track down an illegal. And I think he had a record also.
And he was stalking her previous to, they actually have ring camera footage of him coming out of her house. So he stalked